Cole, you don't belong here. The words cracked through the barracks louder than any rifle shot. Boots froze mid-lace. Conversations died, and every head turned toward me. Sergeant Miller stood at the door, his shadow stretching across the floor like a judge at sentencing. He looked me up and down, my scuffed second-hand boots, my worn duffel bag, the accent that slipped when I said, "Yes, Sergeant." Then he smirked. "Army takes all kinds, I guess, even factory rejects." The barracks erupted in laughter, a chorus of cruel chuckles bouncing off the concrete walls. I just stood there, face burning, clutching my father's old coin in my pocket so hard it cut into my skin. That was my welcome to boot camp. From day one, I wasn't the soldier who could keep up. I was the mistake, the odd one out, the guy everyone wanted to test. They mocked my gear, my silence, my small-town roots. Every insult piled on like sandbags, and the harder I tried to ignore it, the heavier it got. The worst was Corporal Hutchins. Blonde, loud, built like he'd been carved from stone, he lived to humiliate me. "Don't trip over your shoelaces, Cole," he'd bark before a drill. "We don't need dead weight slowing us down." He'd shove me in the chow hall line, knock my tray just enough to spill my drink, then laugh like it was all just good fun. The others joined in, because that's how barracks life works. You laugh with the loudest voice or risk becoming the next target. But not everyone laughed. Private Ramirez never said much, but I noticed the way he glanced at me when things got ugly. Once, when Hutchins knocked a piece of cornbread off my tray, Ramirez slid his own across without a word. He never defended me outright. That would have drawn the fire onto him, but in those small gestures, I saw something. He didn't think I was a joke. He just couldn't say it out loud. Day after day, humiliation became routine. Inspection mornings were the worst. Boots lined in perfect rows at the end of each bunk. Everything spit-shined and sharp. When Miller reached my bunk, he lingered. His eyes ran over my boots. The old leather dull, cracked at the edges despite hours of polishing. "Pathetic," he muttered, tossing them aside so they landed with a thud. "Maybe next time your daddy can buy you a real pair." Laughter followed me out the door. I swallowed it down, stood at attention, and said nothing. Because in the Army, weakness isn't loud. Weakness is when you let them see you break. Still, every night lying on the thin mattress under flickering lights, I thought about leaving. About packing that duffel, slipping out before dawn, and disappearing back to the town no one ever left. But then I'd feel that coin in my pocket. Cool, heavy, unyielding. My father's service coin, worn smooth from years of combat tours. He never spoke about the war, never bragged about the medals. But the coin was his silent reminder that he'd endured worse. And if he could, then so could I. One evening after chow, Hutchins cornered me near the barracks door. "Hey, farm boy, you think this place is made for you?" He jabbed my chest. "You don't belong here. Never will." I stayed still, eyes locked on the floor, refusing to give him the satisfaction. He sneered, shoving past me. That's what I thought. The barracks filled with laughter again, the kind that sticks to your skin long after it's quiet. Ramirez sat on his bunk, watching silently. He didn't laugh, didn't smile, just stared, like he knew something the others didn't. That night, while the others slept, I laced up those battered boots and slipped outside. The rain had turned the training field into a swamp. I ran until my lungs burned, until the mud sucked at my legs like it wanted me buried. Push-ups until my arms trembled. Sit-ups until my ribs felt like they'd crack. Alone, no cadence, no audience. Just me against the mud and the storm. Every drop of sweat, every breathless gasp was one more brick in a wall I was building. Quiet, unseen, but stronger every day. I told myself, they don't have to believe in me. Not yet. Because one day the chance will come. And when it does, I'll be ready. No one knew it then, but the moment of truth was closer than anyone imagined. And when it came, everything, the ridicule, the laughter, the silence, would turn on its head. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. Morning came with the sound of boots pounding the gravel and Miller's voice cutting through the air like a blade. We were out on the drill field, soaked to the bone as rain fell sideways, stinging like needles. My arms burned with every push-up, my chest pressed into the mud, and the taste of grit filled my mouth. "Cole, you're slower than molasses in January," Miller barked. Hutchins laughed loud enough for everyone to hear, adding, "He's not a soldier, he's a mudworm." The squad chuckled, and I kept pushing, face down, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. My muscles screamed, my lungs begged for relief, but something inside me kept whispering, "Don't quit. Not here. Not now." Later, soaked and shivering, we filed into the chow hall. The smell of powdered eggs and burnt coffee filled the air. Hutchins was waiting. He bumped me in line, hard enough to send my tray skidding across the floor. Scrambled eggs splattered near my boots. The whole place erupted in laughter. "Clean up duty for Cole," someone shouted. I froze, fists clenched, but said nothing. I bent down to scoop up the mess. When I sat down at the end of the table, Ramirez slid a piece of cornbread across without looking at me. A tiny gesture. No words. Just quiet defiance against the tide of ridicule. I nodded, though he didn't see it. For the first time all day, I felt the faint spark of something like respect. That night we drilled weapons maintenance. The room buzzed with the sound of bolts clacking and metal against metal. I worked my rifle with focus, hands steady, mind sharp. Then it happened. My weapon jammed. The sound of laughter was instant. Hutchins pointed across the room. "Of course, the one guy who can't even keep his rifle clean." The others laughed, but I blocked them out. Step by step, I cleared the jam, smoothed the mechanism, and reassembled it. When Miller came by to inspect, I locked the bolt back with a clean snap. He didn't say anything, but I caught the briefest flicker in his eyes, a recognition he wasn't ready to admit. Hutchins rolled his eyes, muttering, "Beginner's luck." I knew better. Luck had nothing to do with it. A week later, we were out on the march. Full packs, mud up to our ankles. Hutchins was strutting at the front, tossing insults over his shoulder every chance he got. "Pick it up, Cole. My grandma could move faster." My back ached, my shoulders screamed under the weight of the pack, but I didn't quit. Then one of the recruits, Jones, stumbled and dropped. His pack spilled into the mud. He tried to lift it again, but his arms shook. The column slowed, groans from the rest of the squad echoing. Miller shouted, "Move! No one stops!" Without thinking, I bent down and hauled Jones' pack onto my own shoulders. The straps bit deep into my skin, and every step was agony. Hutchins barked out a laugh. "Look at that! Our mule finally found his calling!" But Ramirez muttered under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear, "You're tougher than you look." It was the first time anyone had spoken to me like that since I got there. I didn't respond. I just kept walking, 2 packs dragging me down, but my pace never broke. That night, while most of the barracks slept, I stayed up. I dropped into push-ups until my arms trembled, sit-ups until sweat pooled on the floor. Shadow-boxed in the dim light, every punch a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let them break me. I wasn't going to quit. I pulled my father's coin from my pocket and rolled it between my fingers. He carried it through Vietnam, through fire and chaos I could barely imagine. I whispered to it like it was a prayer. One day I'll earn this. One day. Then I tucked it back under my pillow and kept training until exhaustion finally dragged me under. The next morning, Miller called us out for an endurance run. The sun blazed hot, the air thick and heavy. We ran in formation, cadence pounding through our chests. Hutchins made sure to drift close enough to hiss his insults. "You'll drop before mile 2. Bet your boots on it." My legs felt like lead, lungs tearing with every breath. At mile 3, 2 recruits fell out. By mile 5, even Hutchins was gasping. But I stayed in step, silent, eyes forward. When we crossed the finish line, Miller's gaze swept over us. He didn't say a word to me, but I caught it again. That flicker. Like he was starting to see something I hadn't shown anyone yet. Then came the explosive moment none of us expected. It was during the rope climb drill. Hutchins went first, cocky as ever, hauling himself up quick but sloppy, nearly losing his grip halfway. He laughed it off. When my turn came, he shouted, "Don't fall, Cole. Wouldn't want you to break that skinny neck." My hands wrapped the rope. I pulled. Higher and higher, legs locking tight, arms steady. The jeers turned to silence as I kept climbing, higher than regulation, past the marker, until I hit the top beam and locked in like I'd been born on a rope. I didn't come down until Miller ordered it. When my boots hit the ground, the silence was louder than any insult I'd heard before. Hutchins' smirk had vanished. Ramirez grinned for the first time since I'd met him. That was the first time the balance shifted, even if no one admitted it. They couldn't laugh it away. They couldn't ignore it. For one moment, they saw me not as the farm boy, not as the mistake, but as someone who could endure, someone who wouldn't break. Hutchins scowled, muttering under his breath. Miller just barked, "Form up!" But I saw the truth in their faces. The jokes weren't so funny anymore. Something had changed, and deep down, they knew it. I walked back to the barracks that night, every muscle aching, every step heavy, but with a fire burning inside me. The ridicule hadn't stopped. The pressure hadn't let up. But I knew now I was getting stronger. I was closer. And the day was coming when all of them, Miller, Hutchins, every single one, would have no choice but to see me for who I really was. And when that day came, it wouldn't just be a climb on a rope. It would be the moment everything turned upside down. The morning of the war game started like any other, with Miller's voice rattling the walls of the barracks before the sun had fully cleared the horizon. On your feet! Gear up! You've got 10 minutes, and if you're late, you'll wish you hadn't been born. The tension in the air was thick. Everyone knew today wasn't just another drill. Today was the simulated combat exercise that decided who would lead squads, who was ready for the next stage, and who might get washed out. Hutchins strutted across the barracks, helmet under his arm, smirk planted across his face. Guess I'll be carrying the squad again. Don't worry, Cole. Maybe they'll let you guard the water bottles. Laughter followed, sharp and cruel. I didn't answer. I just tightened the straps on my pack and made sure every buckle clicked the way it should. My hands were steady, even though my stomach churned like a storm was brewing inside me. By the time we lined up on the field, the sun was up, hot and relentless. The instructors barked out the scenario, a full mock combat mission through the obstacle course, complete with live fire blanks, smoke, and time pressure. Squad cohesion mattered most. If one man fell, the whole squad failed. Hutchins snapped to attention with exaggerated confidence. Don't worry, Sergeant, I'll lead this crew. I've got it covered. Miller eyed him, then looked down the line at me. His gaze lingered just a moment longer than usual before he barked, "Move out!" We hit the course hard, the air filled with smoke grenades, the pop of blank rounds, instructors yelling like enemy fire was all around us. Hutchins was out front, screaming orders that made no sense, charging ahead without checking if the squad was even together. Move it, he shouted, while 3 recruits tripped in the mud. Behind him, I stayed toward the back, helping Ramirez pull a guy to his feet, making sure no one was left behind. Hutchins glanced back, saw me and sneered, "Figures you'd be dragging anchor. You're gonna cost us the whole damn thing." We pushed through the first set of obstacles, low crawl under barbed wire, walls to scale, ditches to cross. My arms burned, my legs screamed, but I kept moving. Hutchins barked at one recruit, "Get your ass over that wall or I'll throw you over." The kid struggled, face red, until I got behind him, locked my hands together, and boosted him up. No thanks came, just another glare from Hutchins. He hated that I was still standing, still silent, still moving forward no matter what he threw at me. Halfway through, it happened. One of the M249s in the squad jammed during a cover fire simulation. The sound of blanks rattling through the air suddenly stopped, and panic spread. Without suppressing fire, the rest of the team froze, exposed. Hutchins yelled, "Who screwed this up? Get it fixed now!" The recruit holding the weapon fumbled, shaking hands useless against the machine gun. Seconds ticked away. The instructors shouted, "You're dead! You're all dead!" Smoke thickened. The squad stalled. That's when I stepped forward. "Give it here." The recruit shoved the weapon into my hands, relief flooding his face. My fingers worked automatically, steady, precise. Pop the feed cover. Clear the belt. Cycle the action. Tap, rack, ready. I slapped it shut and squeezed. The gun roared back to life, the deafening bursts cutting through the smoke. The squad ducked and moved again. Miller's voice carried through the chaos. "That's how it's done!" For the first time, my name wasn't followed by a curse. For the first time, there was something else in his tone. But Hutchins couldn't stand it. "Don't think that makes you a hero, Cole. You just got lucky." He barked more reckless orders, running us straight into the next section without cover. A recruit went down hard, twisted ankle, crying out in pain. Smoke flares erupted all around us, obscuring everything. The instructors yelled, "Casualty down! What's your call?" Hutchins looked around, panicked for the first time. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The squad froze again, caught between indecision and fear. I heard my own voice before I realized I'd spoken. Calm, firm. "Ramirez, help me get him up. Jones, cover left. Hutchins, hold position." They looked at me shocked, but then something strange happened. They listened. Ramirez grabbed the casualty's other arm, and together we hauled him to his feet. I barked again, louder this time. "Move! Keep formation!" The squad moved like they'd been waiting for someone to steady the storm. We pushed through the smoke, fire on both sides simulated by the instructors, and crossed into the clear. By the time we reached the extraction point, everyone was together. Everyone was alive. The whistle blew. "Exercise complete." The squad collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. Hutchins stormed over, red-faced, spitting with anger. "You had no right giving orders. You're nothing but a—" His words died as Miller marched up, clipboard in hand. The silence was thick as the whole platoon gathered around. Miller looked at Hutchins first. "You nearly cost your squad everything with that stunt. Charging ahead, leaving your men exposed." Hutchins stammered, "But Sergeant, I—" Miller cut him off. "Shut your mouth." Then he turned to me. His eyes locked on mine, steady, unblinking. "Private Cole, step forward." My boots felt like they weighed 100 pounds, but I moved. Miller held up a file, slapped it against his palm. "You idiots have been laughing at this man for weeks, but none of you bothered to know who he is." He flipped open the folder and read, voice loud enough for the entire company to hear. "Private Darius Cole, son of staff, Sergeant Raymond Cole, recipient of the Silver Star, 3 tours, wounded in action, honored with a service coin carried through Vietnam." Gasps rippled through the squad. Hutchins' jaw dropped. Ramirez stared at me wide-eyed. I stood frozen, face burning, because the secret I had carried quietly was no longer mine. Miller lowered the file. His tone softened, just slightly. "He didn't tell you, because he didn't want his father's shadow to carry him. He wanted to earn it himself, and today, he damn sure did." The platoon was silent, the only sound the wind flapping the range flags in the distance. Hutchins muttered, "I didn't know." Miller's eyes snapped to him. "That's the problem, Hutchins. You never looked past your own ego." He turned back to me. "Cole, you showed calm under fire, initiative when leadership failed, and the kind of resilience this army was built on. You've earned respect, not just your squad's, mine." The silence that followed wasn't mocking this time. It was heavy, full of something different. Ramirez stepped closer, put a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "I knew there was more to you." Hutchins looked away, shame written across his face. For the first time since I set foot in that place, I wasn't the joke. I wasn't the weak one. I wasn't the mistake. The weight of ridicule that had hung on me like chains suddenly felt lighter. Not gone, but shifted, because they finally saw me for who I really was. That day, everything changed, not because of my father's name, but because in the chaos of smoke and fire, I found my voice. And when I spoke, they listened. The day after the war games, the barracks felt different. The air was heavy, like everyone was holding back words they didn't know how to say. Hutchins, usually the loudest voice in the room, was silent. He sat on his bunk staring at his boots, laces undone. The rest of the squad gave me sideways glances, quick and awkward, like they just realized they'd been looking at me wrong all along. I didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't used to silence that didn't carry laughter or insults. For once, I wasn't the punchline. I was something else, and that unsettled them. At chow, the shift was even clearer. Normally, Hutchins made a show of shoving me aside, cutting in line, bumping my tray. This time he just stood behind me, quiet, eyes down. Nobody said a word as I carried my tray through the hall. The only sound was boots against tile and silverware clinking against metal trays. I sat down, and for the first time since arriving, no one laughed. Ramirez slid across from me, chewing slowly, studying me. "You carried us yesterday," he said under his breath. "We all know it." I shook my head, poking at my food. "We just got lucky." He leaned closer, voice firm. "No, you led when it mattered. Don't pretend otherwise." His words hung between us, simple but heavy. They meant more than any applause ever could. But Hutchins wasn't done. Later that night, when the lights dimmed and the barracks settled, he came over. His steps were slow, deliberate, like he was carrying weight on his shoulders. He stood by my bunk, hands and fists at his sides. For a second, I thought he was going to start the old game again. Instead, he muttered, "I misjudged you." The words sounded foreign coming from him, like they hurt to say. I looked up, unsure if it was a trick. His face was pale, eyes darting like he couldn't hold mine for long. "I thought you were weak. I was wrong." He stood there another second, then turned back to his bunk without waiting for an answer. The room was silent, every recruit pretending not to listen, but I could feel their eyes on me. Hutchins' confession didn't erase the weeks of humiliation, but it cracked something open. For the first time, they weren't laughing at me. They were watching me. The next morning, Miller called the platoon to formation. His voice was sharp as ever, but there was something different in the way he looked at us. He paced slow, hands behind his back, boots crunching against gravel. "Yesterday, you all learned something important," he said, his voice carrying across the field. "Strength isn't in who yells the loudest. It's in who stands when everyone else falls apart." He stopped right in front of me. The platoon stiffened. I kept my eyes forward, heart pounding. Miller's tone dropped lower. "Private Cole showed you what real soldiers are made of. Calm under fire, steady when leadership failed. That's what matters." The words hit harder than any insult he'd thrown at me. For weeks he'd broken me down, humiliated me, pushed me past exhaustion. Now in front of everyone, he raised me up. I didn't move, didn't smile, didn't even blink. But inside, something shifted. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. Later that day, during weapons drill, Hutchins fell in beside me. No smirk, no insults, just silence. When the order came to break down and reassemble, his hands shook. He fumbled with the bolt, cursing under his breath. Without thinking, I reached over, steadying his hand. "Like this," I said quietly, guiding him through the motion. He glanced at me, shame in his eyes, but he nodded. "Thanks." That one word carried more weight than all his laughter combined. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was something different. Respect born out of failure. In the evenings, the barracks began to feel less hostile. Conversations carried without my name being dragged into them. Ramirez spoke more openly, sharing stories about his family back home, about how he'd joined because he wanted to prove something too. We found common ground in the silence we'd both carried, the way we both knew what it felt like to be underestimated. One night, as we polished boots under the dim lights, he said, "Funny thing is, the same guys who laugh the loudest will be the first to follow you when it counts." I didn't answer, but I knew he was right. The balance had shifted. Quietly, without anyone saying it out loud, I'd gone from the outcast to the one they watch. But it wasn't all smooth. There was tension still, cracks in the new respect forming around me. Some recruits weren't ready to admit what they'd seen. I overheard whispers in the chow line. "He just got lucky. Miller's playing favorites. Won't last long." The old doubts tried to creep back in. Was I strong enough, or was it just one good day? Those thoughts gnawed at me, even as the atmosphere changed. I carried them like I carried my pack, heavy and unavoidable. But every time I felt them pulling me down, I pressed a little harder, trained a little longer, held on to the memory of pulling that squad through smoke and chaos. That wasn't luck. That was earned. The climax came during a squad drill a week later. We were assigned to practice bounding overwatch, moving in pairs under simulated fire. Hutchins and I were paired together. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The others whispered, waiting for sparks to fly. At first he stumbled, his timing off, his cover sloppy. Miller's voice roared across the field. "You call that fire discipline?" Hutchins flushed, anger rising, ready to snap back. But I stepped in. "I got you covered. Move when I say." My tone wasn't sharp, wasn't mocking, just steady. He hesitated, then nodded. I fired. He moved. Then he fired. I moved. Back and forth, smoother each time, until we were in rhythm. By the end, we reached the finish line together. No insults, no laughter. Just two soldiers moving as one. The silence afterward was deafening. For weeks, Hutchins had been my shadow, my tormentor. In that moment, he was my partner. The shift wasn't just in him, it was in all of them. They saw it, and they couldn't unsee it. When we returned to formation, Miller scanned the squad. His voice was low but sharp enough to cut through the silence. "That's how it's supposed to look. One soldier covering another. Doesn't matter where you came from, doesn't matter who you are. Out here, it's about trust." His eyes found me, then Hutchins. "Looks like some of you finally figured that out." A murmur rippled through the ranks, but no one laughed. No one dared. The moment was too real, too raw. That night the barracks were quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet. It wasn't the silence of mockery waiting to explode. It was the silence of men thinking, replaying the shift they just witnessed. I lay on my bunk, staring at the ceiling, my father's coin pressed into my palm. For the first time, I didn't just carry it as a reminder of his strength. I carried it as proof of my own. And though tomorrow would bring more drills, more pain, more chances to fail, I knew the tide had turned. I wasn't just the recruit they mocked. I was the soldier they'd have to follow when it mattered most. Evening colors always had a way of quieting the base. The bugle cut through the air, sharp and steady, and every soldier froze where they stood. Boots clicked together, hands snapped to brows, eyes locked on the flag as it sank with the fading sun. That night I stood among them, sweat still drying on my uniform from the day's drills, shoulders aching from weeks of strain, but standing taller than I ever had before. The flag dropped inch by inch, and I felt the weight of everything that had led me here. The laughter, the humiliation, the endless drills in the mud. The moment I'd finally found my voice. For the first time, I wasn't wishing I could disappear in the crowd. I was proud to be standing there, a soldier among soldiers. After formation, Miller dismissed us with his usual bark. "Platoon, fall out!" The men broke into small groups, voices carrying as they walked back toward the barracks. I stayed still, not ready to move, watching the last streaks of sunlight vanish behind the motor pool. Miller lingered. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time without scorn. He gave the slightest nod, just a flicker of acknowledgement, but in that moment it meant more than any medal. "You've earned your place, soldier," he said quietly. No shouting, no insult tucked at the end, just truth. Then he walked off, leaving me with a silence louder than all his orders combined. Back in the barracks, the mood had shifted. The old jeers were gone, replaced by quiet conversations, the shuffle of cards on a table, the low hum of laughter that didn't sting anymore. Ramirez sat across from me, lacing his boots for the next day. He leaned forward, voice low. "You didn't just prove yourself out there," he said. "You reminded the rest of us what this uniform really means." I didn't answer. I just nodded, because deep down I knew he was right. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about all of us, about the respect we owed each other, no matter where we came from or how we started. I lay back on my bunk, staring at the ceiling fans turning slow circles. The room smelled of boot polish, sweat, and soap, the scent of every soldier's struggle. I reached under my pillow and pulled out the coin, my father's coin. For weeks I'd clutched it like a lifeline, praying I could live up to the weight it carried. Tonight it felt different. It wasn't just his story anymore. It was mine too. I closed my fist around it and whispered, "I earned this." And for the first time, I believed it. The barracks lights flickered out one by one, leaving the room in shadows. Around me, the men shifted in their bunks, the steady rhythm of breathing filling the silence. Tomorrow would bring more drills, more pain, more tests. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I knew when the time came, they would stand with me, because I wasn't just the kid they mocked or the mistake they thought I was. I was their brother now. And in the Army, that bond means everything. Respect isn't given. It's earned. In silence, in sweat, in sacrifice. That's the truth I carried as I drifted off to sleep. Coin pressed in my hand. Flag still burning in my mind. And that's the truth I'll carry as long as I wear this uniform. The image that will stay with me forever is simple. A line of soldiers, sweat still on their brows, standing in silence as the flag rose in the evening sky. No laughter, no insults, just quiet respect. And in that silence, the same men who once mocked me now stood shoulder to shoulder, no longer looking down on me, but looking across at me as equals. Sergeant Miller, the man who broke me down with every word, gave the faintest nod. Not much, but in this world, a nod from a sergeant can weigh more than a medal. That was the moment I knew things had changed for good. Looking back, I've learned something that every soldier eventually learns. Respect isn't granted by rank, birth, or appearance. It's earned through sweat, through sacrifice, through holding the line when everyone else wavers. I faced injustice. I endured prejudice. I stayed silent when it hurt. And when the time came, I let my actions speak. Actions always speak louder than words. And in the end, the same silence that once marked me as weak became my greatest weapon. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's not just a saying. It's a truth written in every mile marched, every bruise carried, every humiliation endured and overcome. This story isn't just mine. It belongs to every soldier who's been underestimated, every veteran who's been doubted, every person who's had to prove their worth in the hardest way possible. Brotherhood, dignity, resilience, honor. That's what binds us. That's what keeps the line unbroken. If this story speaks to you, share your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button to show support and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories we share together. Until then, stand tall, stay strong, and know you're never alone in this fight.